Yeah, so today I'm going to be talking about how to use analytics to optimize your product. If you recall my talk yesterday, I didn't really talk about analytics much. It's much more about qualitative techniques to define your product, get clear on your customer, get clear on your value prop, right? So that's all before you launch your product. And today's all about, let's assume we've launched our product, and now we actually have a product in market. We can use analytics to improve it and optimize it. Real quick about my background. Most of you got the intro yesterday. Technical background. Started out in submarine design, moved out here a while ago to go to business school. That's where I discovered PM as a career. I asked people, where's the best place to learn PM? Since I'd never done it, they said Intuit. So I worked at Intuit for 5 years, which was a great experience. After that, I worked at startups. I did my own startup, and I became a product management consultant, which I've been doing for 9 years now. I'm also very passionate about sharing best practices. So for 4 years now, I've been running a monthly speaker series called Lean Product and Lean UX. It's in Mountain View. I'll tell you guys more about that. My Twitter handle's @Dan Olsen. I'm going to be giving away a few books. That's how you can win a book. And I post all my slides and videos on dan-olsen.com if you want to check out the slides later. So since this is now our second day together for most of us, I actually want to share a secret that's not in the book. It's one of the most closely guarded PM secrets out there, and it's the PM motto. And I'm guessing most of you have not heard it before. Does anyone know Spider-Man's motto? We're in Silicon Valley. Someone's got to be Marvel. Yeah. Okay. Anybody else got it? With great power comes great. You got the key words. That was good. That was good. It would have come up on a Google search. Yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. So the product manager's motto is similar, but it's a little different, basically. And it's, with great responsibility comes no power. So we're all laughing. We're crying a little bit on the inside because we wish we had some power, but we don't. But anyway, PMs are responsible for a lot of things. I had a lot of great discussions with PMs yesterday about all the things they need to do. You know, if you don't have a designer, then you've got to do some wireframes. You always fill the gap. So we're responsible for a lot of things. And I've been speaking to audiences in product management since 2007, answering questions and building content. And that's what led to the book, basically, the Lean Product Playbook, which came out almost 3 years ago now. And I wrote it as a comprehensive guide to all the things that you need to know as a product manager. And it's meant to be a playbook to give you a hands-on guide, like a 6-step process, which I covered 3 of the steps yesterday, right? I'm actually, like I said, I'm happy to give a couple of copies away today. The way you win is just by tweeting. You have to be here to win. So sorry for the folks online. And if you want to throw on a hashtag like ProductCon or product management, that'd be great. So again, the context for what I'm talking about today is you've got a product in market, and you want to use analytics to improve it, right? Before you've launched your product, it's hard to have any analytics. Once you've launched it, you can. And just like I had the lean product process for pre-launch, I have a process for how to think about and approach using analytics to improve your product post-launch. And that's the lean analytics process. So this is chapters 13 and 14 in my book, basically. It all starts out with figuring out what are the metrics that we want to track that are basically important, figuring out the baseline value, like where are we at today, right, if we're not tracking that today. Figuring out for each metric, which one offers, how much upside potential is there? What's the ROI if we try to improve that metric, right? Thinking about that. And this is all at the global level for your whole product and your whole business, basically, right? And so what you want to do is look across those and figure out which one has the biggest upside potential. Once you identify that metric, then you're going to select that metric and focus on working on that metric. And we're going to go into a metric-specific optimization loop now, right, for that metric. And what we're going to do there is basically, as a team, say, great, we want to improve this conversion rate. We're going to brainstorm different ideas for how to improve it. We're going to figure out which idea we think has the highest ROI. We're going to design and roll it out, and we're going to see how the metric changes. And we hope that it goes up and to the right? But if it doesn't, we've still learned, right? So there's value in going through the loop, even if the first or second time you don't really move the needle a whole lot on that metric. And we're learning and iterating. And over time, you will find something that moves that metric. Over time, you'll find something else. Eventually, over time, it'll start to get harder and harder. As you find the easy ways to improve that metric, it's going to get harder and harder. You're going to get diminishing returns. So at some point, it makes sense to get out of this loop, go back to the global set of metrics and say, okay, we fixed that conversion rate as much as it makes sense to right now. Let's go back and figure out what's the next metric that we should be improving, right? And when you're thinking about metrics, there can be a million different metrics that you can track. It can be a little overwhelming. So it can be helpful to have a holistic framework for how to think about the metrics. And a while ago, Dave McClure created a great holistic framework called Startup Metric for Pirates. It was mentioned by Tal yesterday. Has anyone who's heard of this before? R, or Startup Metric for Pirates, right? So it's a great framework. And what's so great about it is it applies to any business, right? It's a way to just start with metrics at a high level and cover the landscape. And it's AARRR because that's the first letter of each of the 5 parts. So the first one is acquisition. Acquisition is all about, how do we get people to our website or to our app to learn about it. If they don't even know about it, how do we get them to the point where we can tell them about our app and hopefully convert them to customers? They're not customers yet. They're just prospects right now. The second A, is activation. And that means how do we convert those prospects? If we got them to our landing page or our site, what percentage of those are we converting to actual customers? However we define customers. It may be paying, it may be registered, it may be an email, whatever it is. That's what that means. And I usually would call this conversion, but then it wouldn't spell R like a pirate, so it would mess it up. So it's called activation, basically. Then once they're customers, by definition, they're using your product. Right? That's what a customer means. They start using your product. Not all of them keep using your product. Hopefully, they keep using it. And that's the first R. The third letter is retention, right? What percentage of people are continuing to stay active, right? And then the next R is referral, which is, hey, hopefully, as a function of people using your product, they like it and they tell their friends, right? Josh Ellman talked about 3 different types of virality. One is word of mouth. One is demonstration. The other one is you may actually have some social mechanisms where people can invite their friends. Or if you're a communication product like Slack, you're going to have some implicit viral loops there, right? So for B2B, this is often less important. It's not like the CMO of IBM is Facebook friending the CMO of Adobe saying, you got to check out this B2B app, right? So that one is the one that may not apply as much in your case. But certainly for games and social products, it's critical. But these other 3 are definitely important. And the final R is revenue. Right? This is, hey, by virtue of the customers using our product, we should be making some money. Either they're paying us or we're making money by monetizing their behavior or something like that, right? So that's the last one, right? And the goal here is to, hopefully you can see how this applies to every business, is to figure out, hey, at this point in our business, which one should we be focusing on? There's 5 choices here. Which one at a macro level offers the highest ROI? And so you want to focus on the right metric at the right time. And I call that the metric that matters most for right now. Right? And that'll change over time, MTMM for short. It's like, right now, for our product, for our business, what's the metric that matters the most? To do a quick little mini sample, let's say we have a new product. We're about to launch it next week, or we just launched it, say, today, and we're like just trying to decide, should we focus on acquisition? Should we focus on getting more prospects to our webpage? Should we focus on conversion, getting people that come to our webpage to convert to customers, or should we focus on retention? One of these is going to be better, offer the highest ROI right now. And there's no one answer for every situation, but in general, the answer that I give is if we just launched our product, more than likely our retention is probably never we want it to be, not where we want it to be. So we can go spend a lot of money on acquisition and buy Google ads and Facebook ads, but then people are going to come. We haven't optimized conversion yet, so not that many people are going to convert. Our product isn't too sticky yet, so a lot of people are going to drop out, right? So in general, it makes sense retention first till it gets to a decent point. And I talk a lot in other talks about the leaky bucket metaphor. Retention is basically how much water is staying in your bucket versus leaking out, customers being the water. Then conversion, and then acquisition. That's the way to get the most ROI on your marketing dollars in general. And then I like there are a lot of different metrics you could focus on. In the context of product market fit, which is what my book is all about, I think there's actually, in my opinion, there's one metric. If you just have one metric to say, hey, we just launched a product and we want to track our product market fit, I think there's one metric. So, well, I'd love to hear what you guys think, some of the metrics that would be good. What metric do you guys think would be good to track if you've just launched a new product to see where you're at with product market fit? Referral, okay. What else? Lifetime value, retention, yeah. People actually purchase, yeah. So there's a lot of different things you can do, right? And again, I think just in the context of product market fit, I personally like retention rate. I just got done talking about the leaky bucket stuff, right? So I want to explain what retention rate is because it's a certain way of looking at it. But it's basically what percentage of people are still remaining active over time. And it's best understood and usually displayed as a retention curve. So what you do, let's take the easiest example. Say we just launched a product. We take all the customers that signed up in the first 30 days and we throw them in a bucket. And we say, okay, let's watch them, not calendar days, but for each user, let's index the time frame for when they joined and first started using it. And then let's see how they drop off over time. And they will drop off over time, right? So the first thing you notice on this curve is this. It doesn't start at 100%. It starts at 20-some%. What does that mean? That means like around 80% of people after they use it the first time never came back. This is a real retention curve for mobile apps. It's pretty brutal. There will always be a gap. Everybody loses people. They go and they either forget about it or they just realize it doesn't meet their needs. There's a lot of reasons why people don't come back, right? So that's just a reality. then it decays, and then it eventually goes down. And it can do one of two things at the end here. I've shown it where it flattens out, which is the good case. But for most new products, frankly, it goes down to 0. It's just a question of when. Is it 30 days? Is it 60 days? Is it 90 days? What that means is all those customers you work so hard to get in the bucket eventually all leak out, right? And so that, obviously that's basically what you need to see how you're doing. If conversely you're holding on to some people, that's great. That means these people have stuck with you for 90 days. Your product is doing something valuable to them. Now, over time, as you improve your product, you're going to want to not all throw all the customers into one big bucket and analyze them as one big group. You want to slice them and analyze them separately and say, hey, great. Those are the guys in the first month when we had all those bugs and those issues, but we fixed those. Let's look at the next group of people. That's where cohort analysis comes in. All that means is dividing your user base into different segments and looking at the retention curves for each of those segments. Typically done by time. Let's take the people that signed up in January, February, March, but it doesn't have to be by that. It could be by acquisition channel. It could be by customer segment. But here's an example of cohort curves. So we have 3 cohorts here. Again, we have what percentage of users are returning over time. This time we have weeks in sign up instead of days, but we've got 3 cohorts. Cohort A is in the blue diamonds, cohort B is in the red square, cohort C is in the green triangles. I need some audience participation here, so speak up, guys. I know it's the beginning of the morning. Imagine you were the product manager for this product. Which cohort would you rather have as your cohort of users? Who would rather have cohort A, blue diamonds, as their cohort? Raise your hand. Who would rather have cohort B, red squares, as their cohort? Raise your hand. Who would rather have green triangles, cohort C? Did you guys have a secret meeting before my talk and say, when Dan puts it up, let's do cohort C? No. But do you have PhDs in retention rate that I don't know about? No. Your brain just knows. Why is it? Why did everybody pick the green triangle? It's got the no, blue's the highest. Blue's the highest. Green's not the highest at the end, right? Your brain knows what matters the most is what's highest at the end, right? But yeah, so your brain knows that, right? And when I give the other talk that's all about talking to people in groups of 5 to 8 at a time, I sometimes get the Spock quant types that go, yeah, Dan, but that's not statistically significant, right? And that's just people talking to you. So the real secret of if you want to have a quantitative measure of product market fit that's behavioral and not attitudinal, it's where this line ends up. So what I'm telling you is if this flattens out, if it goes to 0, you don't have product market fit. If it flattens out, whatever percentage it flattens out at, that's a measure of your product market fit. It's a real, live, believable measure. And the higher it is, the better, right? And over time, what you want to do over time is, say we launch our MVP beta 2 years ago, 24 months ago, and this is our retention curve. We managed to hold on to, say, 5% of people after 12 months. What we want to do, say the next 6 months, we work really hard listening to customer feedback, fixing bugs, adding features, fixing UI, fixing messaging. What we hope to see is, if we look at the next group of people that signed up 6 months later, that whole curve moved up. And most importantly, that the tail value, the asymptotic value at the end, went up. And hopefully in the next 6 months, we continue to better understand our customers and improve things. So that's what you want to see where you're at on retention, right? And make sure you're not at 0. If you are, get it flat, and then steadily over time, improve it. That's how you improve product market fit and use analytics. I like to share real-world data to support my points whenever I can. This is real-world data from the Android App Store. So these are retention curves, percentage of users still active, days since app install. And what they've done is they've done 4 cohorts. They've done them in a very particular way. The red curve up here, that's the top 10 apps in the Android App Store. The next curve is the next 50 apps. The next is the next 100. The next is the next 5,000. So what does it show? It shows that the top apps have the best terminal retention rate. And then the next best apps have the next best, right? So it just shows you that basically it's a direct measure of that. Now, so you want to make sure your bucket's not leaky enough, right? And then you can focus on conversion and acquisition, the other parts of the R startup metric for pilots framework. At some point, you need to go beyond that framework. It's great to get your head around the 5 different areas and to focus and get retention down and get acquisition and conversion. At some point, when you get to the revenue part, you need to take into account the specifics of your business, because different businesses are in different revenue in different ways. That's where the concept that I talk about in my book, the equation of your business, comes in. And I have a technical background, engineering background, so if I want to optimize something, I want to be able to express it quantitatively as an equation. And so that's how I think about your business. And if you're thinking about, gosh, I don't know how to approach my business as an equation, you can always start with profit equals revenue minus cost. And for most tech businesses, What matters the most is the revenue. The marginal cost isn't as important as the marginal revenue. And so the key here is to break the revenue down. This isn't actionable. So yeah, we want to go grow revenue. That's not actionable. What we want to do is break it down mathematically so we get to the point of having actionable metrics. So I'm going to do that for a subscription business model. Let's say we have a SaaS subscription product, and we have like a 30-day free trial that people can do, and then they have to upgrade, right? We can break revenue down into, by the way, this is for a given time period, a given month, a given year, whatever it is. We can break revenue down into how many paying users do we have times what was the average revenue per paying user. You may have heard of ARPU as an acronym for that, right? So it's paying users times ARPU, right? That's a way to break it down. Those two together just equal that. And then we can break down the paying users into, okay, for this month that we're looking at, how many new paying users did we get? And then how many repeat paying users did we have from the previous time period? When you're doing these exercises, it's almost always beneficial to distinguish between new customers or users and returning, basically, right? The repeat paying users actually just ends up being, well, how many did we have in the last time period times 1 minus some cancellation rate or churn rate, basically, right? So this all just, we can write this whole thing out. Revenue equals this long thing if I wrote it out, right? Back on the new users, again, I mentioned we had some free trial. So we can say, well, how many trial users do we have? And what was the conversion rate? That will give us how many new paying users that we have. And for the trial users, we may have various marketing channels like SEO, SEM, viral, and we have a conversion rate, right? So we started out with a high-level revenue that's not actionable, but now we've broken it down into several items that could be actionable. All right, we could say, hey, do we think it's better to focus on the trial conversion rate? Is that the best way to improve revenue? Or is decreasing this cancellation rate the best way? Or is increasing the revenue per paying user the best way? Or is fixing our marketing the best way? That's the kind of discussions that you can have, right? And for SaaS products, because of this 1 minus factor, churn rate can be very, very powerful. It may sound like a small improvement to take your churn rate from 6% to 3%, but it has like a non-linear improvement in like revenue and lifetime value. So anyway, what we want to do is break this down for your business, and then what I think about each one of these detailed metrics, I view it as a gauge or a dial, right? And a gauge or a dial is a numerical measure. It has a minimum possible value. It has a maximum possible value. This would be for a percentage metric, right? It goes from 0 to 100. And then it has, where is it at today? I couldn't find one that had an arrow pointing up here, so that's the current value, right? But that's the way I think about each metric is what's the min value, what's the max value, where are we at today? And that's the framework to figure out which ones are the critical few. As we look at each of those gauges, how much upside potential do we think there is for each of those, right? How much do we think we can move the needle? Hey, if we redo the design of this page, we can move the conversion rate from 5 to 10%, right? What would the revenue impact be using the equation of the business? We can calculate what that would be. And how many resources do we think that it would take to move the needle that much? It's usually developer time, maybe money. And then what we want to do is look across, again, the metrics and say, which one do we think offers the best ROI? Now, when you do that, you typically see one of 3 metrics ROI profiles. The first one is what I call a good ROI. And the way I show this is we've got return here and investment. Like if we invest, and the yellow dot is where we are today, and the white line shows if we do the best ideas, if we pursue the best ideas, and we invest this much, how much return will we get? So hopefully that makes sense. This is a good ROI, right? We're down here with a little bit of investment. We can go up here and get a lot of return, right? There's bad ROI situations, right? Here, we're up here on the curve now, and so we can put in a lot of investment, but it's not going to lead to a lot of return. And those are the main ones that you see. But there's a third type that you can see if you really analyze things carefully, and that is one like this, where if you analyze things just right, you realize, gosh, there's something that really, with a little bit of investment, can make a really big improvement in the return. So the return curve is fundamentally different shaped. I call these like silver bullet opportunities, right? And they do exist, especially if you haven't started doing analytics optimization. All right, I want to close out with a case study of applying the lean analytics process from end to end. And again, I need some audience participation. You got to pretend you're the product manager here. I used to be the head of product management at Friendster back in the day. Did anyone use Friendster back in the day? All right, cool. So it was the first social network. And so it was a great opportunity for me to, back in 2004, work on viral loop optimization. When I showed up Friendster, everyone in the building was like, viral growth is critical. We need to get new users from our existing users without paying, obviously. It was implicit. Everybody believed that. I'm like, great, what have we done on that? Nothing. Nothing. I said, okay, all right, I'm going to apply my process, and I need to figure out what framework and how to approach this. So the first thing I did is I said, okay, let me define the viral loop, and then let me figure out what metrics I can put on there that make sense, right? So the viral loop is basically, we have active users that are using our site, they have the opportunity to invite their friends, right? Not all of them do, but some of them do. The friends get an email saying, hey, Dan Olsen wants you to join Friendster. They either click on the email or they don't. If they click on the email, they get to the registration process. They either get through it or they don't. And then if they get through it, they become users, some of which remain active, right? So the first thing I did is I defined this kind of UX flow and where people could drop off. The next thing I did is, okay, let me figure out what metrics I can instrument here to track and optimize this. The first thing was, what percentage of users are active, right? Not all of them are active. The next thing was, what percentage of users are sending invites? Not all of them are sending invites in a given month or week or whatever, right? There's actually a second factor. When you invited your friends, it's not like you had to invite one at a time. You can invite multiple. So there was invites per sender as well to kind of capture that step. The next one was just, hey, what's the click-through rate on those invitation emails? And the next one was, okay, what's the registration conversion rate? What percentage of people are getting through, right? So those were the 5 metrics that I used to instrument that loop. And now, taken together, they mention your viral ratio. And now I had to do, this is the tough part. I'd be like, great, which one should I focus on? I'm the PM. I'm the head of PM for Friendster. I've defined 5 metrics. Which one should I focus on? I want you to picture that you're in those shoes. And I have a little bit more information than you guys did, but not a whole lot because I had just started. Let's make it simpler. Let's boil it down to these 3. Percentage of users sending invites, invites per sender, and conversion rate. I want you to think about which one would you focus on. Again, I know you don't have a lot of information. Raise your hand, please. Who would focus on percentage of users sending invites? Okay. Who would focus on invites per sender? Who would focus on registration conversion rate? Okay, that's the that's the most popular one, right? The next step in the process, does anyone remember what it was? It was like, what are your baseline values? I don't like tricking people, but I didn't show you the baseline. I had you vote before we showed the baseline values. I do that to show you the power of baseline values. You ready? Here's the baseline values. Percentage of users sending invites was at 15% of users were doing that. Average invites per sender, on average when people invited friends, it was 2.3, and the registration conversion rate was 85%. Now that we have baseline values, why don't we revote? Who would like to focus on improving percentage of users sending invites? Got some more hands. See, that's the power of baseline. All you people that changed your vote, all you need to know, you have no idea how invites work or anything. You just know where you're at, and I'll talk about that in a sec. Who would focus on invites per sender now? And who would focus on conversion rate? A lot less, right? Great, awesome. So what's going on? There's a quick hack. Again, your brain knows this stuff, right? Just by knowing the baseline value, you know. It's called the upside potential of a metric. That's what I call it. And not knowing anything about the metric or the product, you can usually make a pretty good guess on which one is going to offer the best upside potential. What we do, remember I said each of these is a gauge, right? It has a minimum value. What's the minimum value for registration process yield? 0. Maximum value, 100, because it's a percentage. What's the baseline value? Where are we at today? We're at 85%. So what we can do is say, hey, let's quantify what the max possible improvement is. Not saying we would get it, but if we just had the most amazing outcomes and ideal results, what's the most we could do? We're at 85%, so the max is 15 more points, right? If we divide that from where we are, it's an 18% improvement. The maximum improvement, if we could do everything perfect in the world, would be 18%, right? The second one, what's this one? Percentage of users sending invite. It also goes from 0 to 100%, right? Where are we at? We're at 15%. How much headroom do we have here? We have 85 percentage points that we can go up. If we divide that by 15, that's 570, right? That's why your brain just knows, hey, 15 versus 85, that's a no-brainer that it's got a bigger upside potential, right? This third one, invites, average number of invites sent per sender. What's the minimum value for that one? 0. What's the maximum value? Infinity. Next. How many people in the world? 7 billion. How many on the internet? 4 billion. All right, cool. Yeah, so it's funny. Everyone goes, infinity. It's like, as you get all excited, it's like, yeah, we can do it, right? But it's big, right? I don't know. We're at 2.3, right? Question mark divided by 2.3 equals what, right? I don't know. But there's a really good chance it could be even bigger than this one, right? It's fundamentally a different metric. That's why it's important to think about the min and max. These are percentage metrics, right? So is anyone feeling a sense of deja vu right now from something I said earlier? Remember I said that there's 3 profiles, right? There's a bad profile of ROI metric. That's what that one is, right? We're up here. We're at 85%. It's going to take a lot of effort to not get a lot of return. Second one, good ROI curve, right? We're down here. We feel like, hey, there's a lot of upside that we can do. Last one, I'm not sure. We're not sure yet, but it seems like this average number of invites sent per sender could be a silver bullet metric because it's got so much, it's got near infinite potential right up there, right? Okay, so for those reasons, we decided to focus on this, right? The next step you do in the process is great. We're going to focus on that as a team. Let's brainstorm all the different ways we can improve that metric, right? And for each idea, we try to estimate how much do we think it'll move that needle on. If people are inviting 2.3 friends today, for the idea that you just brainstormed, do we think that'll move it to 3, 4, 5, 6? What do we think it'll do? And then we think about what's the expected cost. How many engineer weeks or days is it going to take? And you want to run some high-level ROI filter and figure out what you want to do. What we decided to do, they're popular now, but back then, one thing you didn't know is to invite friends, you literally had to manually type in their email addresses. There wasn't an address book importer, and so we were the first social network to add that. We decided, let's add it. And then again, we had to do the ROI because you had to build one for each Gmail, for Yahoo, for Hotmail. You had to build one. So we basically realized, hey, most of our users are on Yahoo. Let's do an MVP of that and see what it does. So here we go. We've got our baseline value cruising along, 2.3. Again, this is how many, when somebody invites their friends, how many do they invite per time, right? 2.3. And we're cruising along, tracking my baseline. And this is a 7-day average, by the way. So we roll out the new feature, and this is what we saw. It more than doubled. It took a little while because of the 7-day average, but it more than doubled. So it turned out to be a silver bullet feature. So because we doubled that, we doubled the number of active users and new users and revenue that we basically had, right? So I was pretty excited about that result. And it only took, I forgot to mention, it only took like one engineer 1 week to build that thing, right? So high ROI, and then we replicated it for Hotmail and Gmail and the other ones, and we saw an even bigger increase. So to sum up again, the lean product process, start out by figuring out what your metrics are. Get those baseline values. You saw the power of baseline values just a few minutes ago. Look across them, figure out which one has that upside potential. You can use that upside potential hack to figure out which one is probably going to be the best. And then get into the metric loop, brainstorm, figure out highest ROI, roll it out, analyze, and learn and iterate. Right? So that's basically the process you want to follow. And then I mentioned that I run a meetup. It's called Lean Product Meetup. It's meetup.com/lean-product. Thanks a lot. I'll take questions later. Yep.